Collective Awakening podcast,
sharing truth and knowledge in this time of conscious awakening
with Chris and Stephen. Hello friends, and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast. And myself and Stephen are joined by our guest once again, Rob Tweedie. But not only that, what you can't see is we have a live audience, living people with us tonight as well. Wonderful group, and they've placed some questions for us very kindly. So we've got a wonderful energy that we're enjoying here at the moment, and we're looking forward to this conversation. And so we spoke to you not so long ago, Rob. We had a really great chat.
We did, yes.
About your mediumship journey and many other different philosophies of mediumship as well. So we're hoping to delve into that a little bit more.
Absolutely,
into spirit. And a question that I had actually that I wanted to start with, because we spoke about your early journey to discovering things. But what I'd like to know is, even in recent years, a lot's happened over the last 4 years for a lot of people.
Yeah,
the world's changed things.
Absolutely,
And what changes have you experienced in the way you work or energetically in the last 4 years yourself? Have you felt certain adjustments, things have really...
I have. I feel there is... I've become much more aware of a general, well, I would call it almost a general interest. There's a spark within people now. Say on a simple basis, a few years ago, if somebody said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a medium, right? Probably about 50% of them would have been very, very skeptical. And then maybe 50% would have been quite interested, you know. That has really shifted. And the sort of interest in it now is incredible. And I think people much more are asking those fundamental questions, and they're asking, there's more to this, there's more to life. What are we doing here? What's our purpose? And people talk about things which we talk about spiritually, like soul contracts and what we're doing here and what's our purpose. And people talk about these things without even and they talk about soulmates. I hear that a lot. If I've met my soulmate and it's their partner or whatever, but these things really exist. And people have started talking about spiritual things in quite a deep way without even realizing they're doing it. You know, even when they start saying, oh, I felt, and I've heard even people I've overheard conversations in supermarkets and things like that, and they've said, oh, I'm just drawn to this packet of cheese or whatever it may be. and they're sort of starting to use this. And I've noticed a massive difference. And what I find myself now, whoever I'm with, it's very, very rare that I get anybody now that's sort of a bit sort of skeptical. You know, there seems to be much more of an acceptance and an understanding, a greater understanding. And nearly everybody that I come across, it's like being a doctor, and they always say to you, oh, I've got this ache or this pain. Everybody sort of says to me, oh, have you got something for me or whatever? And they're all interested. They're all very sort of, and even the people who used to be sort of skeptical or cynical, they very much now, if I said to them, oh, I feel an essence around you or an energy around you, they say, oh, come on, let's have a cup of tea and let's talk about what it is. So there's a big shift in sort of acceptance and understanding, and I think it's good. And it's combined also with more of an acceptance from the scientific world as well. There's been all this analysis now on they did the experiments with mediums where they put electrodes on and this type of thing, and there is actual physical brain changes. They did CT scans on them and this type of stuff. So and now you get university departments. I've been working with one, and you get university departments now actually studying this, and people doing PhDs in mediumship and things like this. And this would have not happened years ago, and obviously from my point of view, I massively welcome it. You know, it's
amazing. But also you've seemed to lean into a lot of the past life regression, aren't you? So how did that develop? And do you feel that's something that spirit sort of guided you into?
Very much so.
Of your spiritual work.
Yeah, very much so. And there's I've discovered something which isn't a conventional part of past life regressions. I do past life regressions through an altered state of consciousness. There's different ways of doing it through hypnosis and this type of stuff, and they're all quite effective. But the way I prefer to do it is it's like almost like through a deep relaxation. But when we go through that process, and it takes about an hour to get to the point, what I find found was the altered state of consciousness was the same as I would do as a medium, right? I'm very lucky that I can sort of switch into that within a few minutes or whatever. But the people were arriving at it. So I've now added something on to the past life regressions that I do. So we take people through past lives, which is a fascinating thing, and they're conscious. It's almost like being in a daydream for the way we do it. But at the end of it, I call it a spirit room. But we go into an area, and I will clairvoyantly connect with their loved ones in the spirit world, and it's really amazing. And I'll connect with their loved ones in the spirit world, and I say, please come to this place, right? That we go on this long journey with the person who's having the past life regression, and we end up in a room, for want of a better word, and their loved ones are there, and I've had the most incredible experiences, and they really, it's right, they really are there, you know, and you hear them, they describe it afterwards, and they said, oh, they were amazed to see me. They didn't think, they just come here almost on a whim, not knowing if we were going to be here, and it really happens. And I've had the most incredible, profound things where people have put things right, you know, and they've said, I've waited years to say sorry to my mum, or, you know, those types of things. So I've added that on to it, and it works, and it's turning that person into a medium for that short time, you know. It does take a process to get to that, but it's incredible, you know. So I've been doing that. The past, I've got really guided towards the past life regressions because they're so, you probably know about these things, but they are, you have like retained characteristics and retained memories, and we change your consciousness, so you tap in to a part of your memory that it's all within you already, and we tap into a part of your memory that you can't normally tap into, and you can retrieve these things. And these these retained characteristics are amazing because they explain things, you know. And I've had numerous examples. I've had basic ones. I had a lady where she has always, all her life, had a fear of water on her face. And I think I mentioned to you, and she sort of swims. You should describe it. Where she used to swim. She was getting a bad back from swimming because she had to swim with her head out of the water. And when we did the past life regression, she drowned in a shipwreck, you know. And I've had numerous things like that. Another person who had a really irrational fear of fire, even to the point of matches and things like this, and lighters and things. He couldn't go near them, you know. And he was involved in a fire. So they're just simple examples, but they explain so much about us, and things get diluted a little bit over the sort of generations, but we still have those characteristics, and it's just absolutely fascinating. And the last point on it, out of all the things I do, the mediumship, and if I teach mediumship and that type of stuff, and healing and things like this, for me personally, it's like the most satisfying thing, because everybody can do it. You don't need to be a medium, and it's almost 100%. You don't have to be susceptible to hypnotism or anything like that. It just works as long as you follow the process. It works, and it's just so amazing to hear people's stories from the past. It's amazing.
And it's wonderful. I've explained that both answers to the questions there, because it's explaining an openness that's come around everybody. Not as much the changes that's happening with us, but this openness, things that are happening, and people wanting to find them deep rooted answers, and not just surface answers, but wanting to find, where does this come from? And the openness to it, they want to heal that wound.
So they can
live their life freely.
I think a lot of it as well is moving away from the dogmatic religious aspect.
Absolutely.
More, rather than coming to see a priest, a guru, actually guiding that person into a process for them to see and feel for themselves. You can't kid that, can you? You can't kid your own. And really there's a truth in that all binds us all together.
It's quite a profound experience for them as well.
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
Experiencing that energy that's what I'd call the sweet spots, the undeniable.
I can't
absolutely. Deny what I felt.
It's not
that's
it.
Just telling me this, I'm feeling it.
100%. And so many people that I experience now, when you really start talking to them, and I'm sure there'll be, I would say at least half of you will hear, where you felt a sense of searching for something. A lot of people, they spend almost their whole lives searching for something. And it is searching for that thing that is right for them, their purpose, their soul contract, what they've agreed to do. And you get some lucky people who find it, and and you'll know people like that, and it's exactly what they should be doing. They should be working with children, or they should be doing certain things. And they've found that. And they're people where you get that inner happiness, or that inner contentment, But part of the past life regression can sometimes bring that out in people, and it's like a penny dropping with them. they think, actually, yeah, that's what I need to be. I need to be traveling, or I need to be doing certain things. And it can be really life-changing, Yeah.
I think a lot of things have changed over the past sort of 150 years when we talk about spiritualism, or the modern spiritualism, the sort of the pioneers who sort of brought it from the seances. There's lots of old books on reincarnation being a massive subject.
Yeah.
And then obviously the past 30, 40 years where that's become very dogmatic and pushed to one side is actually resurfacing again.
Yes.
I think some of those old teachings have to come back again.
Yeah.
We talk about hypnosis or regression, where the reincarnation subject is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's really coming back. You can't deny something that
where there was
experienced.
almost a little bit of a narrowness that we went through. There's probably lessons to be learned in that, and it's opening back up again. And so many people sometimes in conversation will say, "Oh, is that a new thing?" Well, actually, it was being done a long time
Absolutely,
ago.
yeah.
It might have had a different name or something else, but and the expansion in mediumship, even of things that other ways, psychic artists, regression, people who work with runes, tarot cards, you could go, the list is kind of endless.
And it's all working with an energy, I've always said this about, if I do readings for people, I do an element of angel cards because I like angel cards, but actually they're just a tool, I'm still connecting with the spirit world. It's just, I'm reading those cards, and it's the same for runes. It's the same, I think it's the same energy, just certain people work with an energy in a different way, and some people like something that they can see. So for say cards or whatever, I just use them because then they're nice to focus, but I don't read the card in that way, if that makes sense, Something I always get asked, and I learned quite recently, and this is just interesting to share with you, is I am often asked when we do past life regression sessions, do we have a choice in coming back, or what's the reason? Why do some people reincarnate, some energies, some souls reincarnate and others don't? And the sort of modern teaching of it, and my experience of it, is that yes, we do. We have a choice, and we have a choice, and there's numerous reasons. Maybe it's to put something right, or to experience something that they want to, or to interact with another person, help somebody else on their journey. So there's numerous reasons. And so generally speaking, I would say, yes, we have a choice, and we decide that we want to come back. It is considered in the spirit world a real privilege to be on the earth as well. They think, we talk about a heaven, don't we? But they talk about earth being heaven, so that's the other way around. And I always touch on this because they can't, in the spirit world, they can't understand why we treat the earth the way we do, because, with all the sort of neglect of nature, because it's such a wonderful place, and it's considered a real honor in the spirit world. There's almost the sense of there's more energy than there is bodies to occupy. So that's the sort of sense of it. So it's considered a real honor to come back to the earth. But there's one category of people, I'll just tell this briefly, where that I've learned, and I've only learned this fairly recently, where there's a category of people who it seems are they don't have a choice, and they're sent back to the earth, and they're sent to perform certain tasks, but these are people that make a global difference. And I'm thinking about people like Mother Teresa, maybe, or maybe a president or something like that, where they would make a difference even to the whole earth or to whole countries. And they don't always achieve that, I hasten to add, but they seem to not have a choice. They seem to be sent at certain times to try and affect outcomes on things on the earth, and I've only learned that fairly recently, and we've given them a name now, and it's we call them ancient spirits. We've got new spirits and old spirits, and then ancient spirits, and so
absolutely. So spirits, we all, like we said before, we talk about the role of the medium and stuff, but we never sort of look at the spirit side. How amazed they would feel, and to feel that they can reach out to a medium and pass on that message to that loved one that's still on the earth plane. It must be absolutely amazing on the other side as well.
It absolutely is. It really is.
So looking about behind what I call behind the curtain or the veil, who decides, if we're in an audience now, as a medium, is it important to know who you're working with, your guides and people, or not? What's your thoughts on that?
For doing the mediumship yourself?
So if you're doing a reading and you're doing a clairvoyant service, you'll have a team of loved ones there. If that's people from this life or in the previous life, that are your team, that are your support workers.
Yeah.
So is it important to know who they are? But what role do they play in the clairvoyant side? Do they bring spirit through, or do they come on naturally? You could imagine a queue of people behind that. I want to speak to Rob. I want to speak to Rob. There has to be some kind of order sometimes.
There does, and they do. But actually, the more important thing, even than that, is the recipient of the message, right? And I'll let you into a little sort of almost like a secret thing here, where you can say I could be doing if I was doing a service, and I could do a clairvoyant connection with you, right? Once you become thinking about your loved one in the spirit world and you become receptive to them, initially I may have been wrong and I may have got the wrong person, and it can happen, or that thing where you get two people both put their hands up. Does anybody know Mary? Yeah, both of you do. Yeah. And then you start all these different things to try and establish who it is, right? But actually, as soon as that connection starts and you start, so if I just started the message by saying, do you know a lady in the spirit world? Yeah. Is your grandmother in the spirit world? Yes. As soon as you connecting like that, that person then comes through. Right. So it may be that the initial connection I had, if you can follow this, wasn't particularly right for you. It wasn't the right one. But so the connection with the person, with your spirit, that's what brings it through more. Okay. And then I've got my spirit team that control that, if that makes sense.
Do you think that's where the voice of the person that you're speaking to is important?
It's a little bit, but it's more the thought, Steve.
The thought.
Yeah. Right. It's more the conscious thought.
Who establishes that? Is that you or spirit, or is it the person?
Right. It works. I would initiate it by doing something. Right. I'll tell you how I do it. I would initiate something. If you were in I'm picking on you here. Sorry about this. Yeah. Sorry about that. But if you were in an audience and I was doing a demonstration, right? Probably the first thing I would do would be to look around and see where I can see any energy, and then I would go to where I'm drawn with the energy. But if I didn't, and that can happen, or I didn't feel particularly drawn to a particular person, right, I may go to you, right, and how I would do this, I would start with something fairly vague. That's a big mistake that people go for with mediumship. They try and go straight in with some amazing piece of detail to amaze everybody, and it doesn't really work like that. You need to establish that connection. So I will say something a bit general to you about maybe how I'm feeling or something, or if I felt you'd had a recent passing or something. I would ask you a question after you had a recent passing, or do you know a lady in the spirit world, or that type of stuff, right? As soon as I get a couple of confirmations from you, because you'll automatically then be thinking of that person, because you're trying to think, well, yeah, who's this? Yeah. Once that, it's almost like you've brought them through then, that they've come because you've called them, right? And the connection will be right then, and it's right, so, and then my energy changes so I can connect with them. So it's you who call them, because I don't know who they are. It's you who call them there. Without you being there, they wouldn't have come, right? So it's you that calls them, but then that's what you say with Steve. That's when your own guides and my own consciousness then tunes into it, and that's how I can read for somebody, and that's how it works, But it's one of my pet hates that if you've ever seen a medium, I'm not criticizing other mediums, but if you've ever seen a medium and they do that, and I've seen it and I'm cringing, because they'll say, give out maybe a name or something, which is fine, and then 3 people put their hand up, and then about 10 questions later, everybody's going, yeah, and they say, well, did he have 3 legs? Yes, he did. Well, mine did as well, and you're trying to separate this, and they talk about these split links and things like that. I'm just I went, what's that all about? But they don't need to do that. And all they need to do is persist with the person that they were first drawn to. So even if you, and as I say, even if it wasn't initially your nan that came through, right? Once you have started connecting there, then she comes through, and that the connection's right, So you don't need to be doing all this thing about sort of, trying to get all different facts to try and split people up. I don't think that's very good mediumship. I feel uncomfortable.
We talked about it a lot on the last podcast we did, and I think it was really, you made a real good point, and it made me think, actually, after I thought that makes total sense. And we were actually talking about some of the rules that certain establishment puts on things. A message should be A, B, C, D, and that could put tremendous pressure where it's not natural. But also you made a point where you said, well, if one of my family members were coming through to me now, if they were stood right here, would I be saying, be going through these questions, or would I be saying, how you doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think I'm doing?
Yeah.
And that's more natural.
Yeah, 100%.
What you would actually do.
Yeah. And how disappointing, this is literally how it works. How disappointing for somebody who's been in the spirit world for years, been waiting to chat to somebody, and if they've got to go through a whole palaver, I do accept that we need evidence. And so, but the evidence that I will give somebody a lot of the time, especially if it's a very emotional message, I'll just do enough to establish that we know who the person is and that you're comfortable, and I may say to you, do you know who this is, right? Or maybe get a name or something like that. Once I've done that, I won't get over bogged down with that. I won't start saying, and they were born here and doing this. And it's the message that they want to say, and even if the message is just to say, look, I miss you, or I love you, I'll say it. It's that's what they want to say. Because how frustrating for somebody, they've been in the spirit world for 10 years, and all who's this idiot talking to them saying, well, tell me where you were born and tell me what colour hair you had, and all this sort of stuff. They say, that's my son here, I want to talk to him, So, and that's how real it is, and we put a lot of, you can't have that structure on it, and I'm really against structured messages in that way, because it's a conversation with your loved one, and it needs to be just naturally what they said. And as much as I can do it, I lead with what they want, and I'll say to them in the spirit world, I say, you've just got a few minutes now. If there's something that you want to say it now. And that's the amazing moments. That's the real mind blowing moments. People say, oh my God,
And then the evidence comes in a natural, organic way.
Of course it does. Forced. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah,
I think if you're thinking, you're in the mind. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, as a medium, you're working through the heart, you're working through an energy, a higher self. The evidence, the guides will bring through that in a very organic, natural way. You don't have to, in a way, the evidence is important, but the message is evidence in itself.
Just what you said, exactly that. Yeah, the evidence will come through.
What comes? I mean, at one time I used to put a pressure on myself over names.
Yeah.
And actually, when I let go of that pressure, what started to happen, things were like, oh my God, you just said that just like my dad would.
Yeah. And what could be better proof than that? Yeah, absolutely. It's those little, and that's what's lovely for us. It's those little, you're doing a reading with somebody, or you're doing a message in a church or somewhere like this. And it's those little things, where you can see the person's face, and I watch their face, and you're thinking, yeah, that's him, and I have had a lot of people saying that, and they say it was like you were standing next to him, and what greater compliment for a medium. It's a lovely thing for somebody to say, It's,
so behind the curtain, just want to ask you one.
Oh, sorry, go on, yeah.
Just sort of, because it'll be interesting, because it's questions that I ask, working as a medium myself, who decides then, you've got a group of 100 people, that as a medium, you've got 100 people in the congregation. Who decides who's going to get a message?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, and I'm going to surprise you with the answer. Because it's not what you think. In my view, it's not. But it's the energy of the person in the spirit world controls it. So it's the same as we have. Certain people have a lot stronger energy, or our own souls. Like the same way as certain people can change their consciousness to be mediums, and other people find it much more difficult. We can all do it, but some people find it more difficult. It's exactly the same in the spirit world. So I will scan a room, right? And then I'll often, the person that I see with somebody's spirit around them, or I hear somebody shouting, it's me there. They will be the person who actually has the strongest energy in that room in the spirit world. So it's them that determine it to start with, and so that's exactly what I do. If I do a demonstration, I'll scan around, I'll look around everybody and see where the energy is, or see if I can see spirit, or somebody's calling me to somebody. That's what I do first. And it's the loved one in the spirit world, And there's another thing which is interesting, which is it's proportional as well, believe it or not, I've found over the years, to the I want to say, the level of, in a way, importance of the message. So people who are really desperate to say something, right, in the spirit world, maybe there is something unresolved or something they've wanted to say or whatever, their energy seems to be stronger. Maybe there's some more forceful or something, but it often happens like that. And often if I'm doing a church service, the first couple of messages I do are often things which have been really issues that people have wanted to sort of clear. And so I don't know if they kind of use that energy even more to get through. But in my view, it's the people, it's not me or my guides or the people I work in the spirit world with, my inspirers. It's the it's the person's loved one who controls that. After that, once the connection's going, then my loved ones come in. And I'm really, really fortunate that I've got a thing, and it's just very lucky that one of my, if you want to call them guides or my inspires, my spirit team, one of them is my dad, right? And he can go for weeks without saying anything, right? But if I'm doing a lot of readings for people, or I'm at a church service or something, and I just don't seem to be able to get a particular connection, or it's a bit vague, you know, I'm really fortunate, and I know that I am, because he then just suddenly comes in. I think, oh, he's here, and he comes in and he tells me some fact about them, and it's fantastic. And we've witnessed it loads of times. They are the real blow away, you know. Mine sort of, you know, they give me the date of birth or something like that, right? And it's my dad, and so he's one of my guides. But that's the only way he helps me. He just comes in for my mediumship, you know, and and it gives me a lot of confidence, because I would never really have a situation where I would sort of freeze or dry up or anything, because he even doing a reading with somebody, he will give me that information. So he's one of my guides, but he's a guide that guides me while I'm actually giving messages, you know.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I know I'm very lucky to have that. Yeah.
Something I'd want to ask that's on a similar sort of vein. It was a great question, that, by the way. That is the age-old question, and who decides. But on the similar to that is, we've all been to demonstrations, churches, centres, wherever that may be, and there'll be one person who will get a message every week.
Yes.
And wherever they go, they will get a message without fail.
Yeah.
And what would you put that down to? Is that because there's a lot of urgency of things to be resolved?
Oh, they're not listening.
Yeah. Good point, Steve. Yeah. That's a very good point. We have a sort of expression where you'll hear it in all churches, where we talk about message grabbers. You know, these people that sort of go and and they're so desperate, and that's the person. And I'm not disrespecting them, but it's the person. They're so desperate for a message, and they just want that sort of message that they'll almost agree to anything. You know, but normally you can see through them quite quickly. You know, but you do get elements of that. Okay. I do also think that there is elements of the person. In a connection, there's three parts to it, as you know. There's the person that's receiving the message. There's the medium that's what they call the conduit, between the worlds, and then there's the person in the spirit world. But the person that's receiving the message is massively important. Without any one of those three elements, the message just doesn't happen. You know, so the person that's receiving the message is massively important. And I do think, I'm not sure about this, but I do think, in my experience, there are certain people who are more open to messages, and then as a medium, we're probably initially drawn to them because they seem to be in some way receptive, which is fine, because that it is an important part of the connection. You know, it's not something we can shy away from. It's really important, because if you know, the connection is simply not there. If I tell you a whole load of stuff about something you've never heard of, that's not really any use to you at all. You know, so.
But sometimes it does happen as well, where information's given to somebody and they're not sure, or they'll say no, and then after they'll come to you and say, I can't take everything. So
100%.
That happens quite a bit. And I find in readings as well, particularly where I've had a couple of examples where for some reason there was spirits sort of trying to push that person to connect with their ancestry, and they're given all these names. You've given me 20 names. And this lady said to me, and I can't understand any of them. And a couple of months later, she said every single name was in this family tree.
Yeah, 100%.
So spirit, you just have to have trust. I think that's a big thing as a medium.
Yeah.
You have to have so much trust in the people that you work with, not being arrogant to say you must take that message, because you've seen that happen before, where I cringe when that happens, where just take it away with you, and spirit have faith that what you are passing on to them is for a reason.
100%. And I think it's a sort of, you've touched on a really interesting thing there, Steve, because I believe that one of the things that I would say about this structure that you have for teaching mediumship and that type of thing, one of the problems with it is mediums shoot themselves in the foot in a way, because they've become obsessed with getting they could talk about the yeses, don't they? You know, I've even heard a medium say, if you say no 3 times, I'm moving on. Well, that's just ludicrous, isn't it? You've either got the information or you haven't. You know what I mean? It's crazy. But we do become obsessed as mediums with getting everything right. You want to be the best and you want to be great, and that's your own ego in a way. And I absolutely agree with you. You must just give it as it is. And I'm just fortunate only because I'm experienced at it. It doesn't bother me in the slightest bit now if somebody, obviously I want to get a connection and make sure that's right. But if there's bits of it that they don't understand at the moment, then that's absolutely fine. I find it very difficult. One thing I find very difficult to distinguish, even now I can't do it properly, where I can't distinguish between easily when I'm saying something to somebody, whether I need to say, look out for this, something happening in the future, or it's already happened. And a lot of times I'll say, look out for somebody telling you about, say pregnancy is a good one. Look out for somebody announcing a pregnancy. And then they just say to me, well, oh yeah, they have this morning, and so it's already happened. Yeah. And I find that quite difficult to judge whether it's something that's happened or something that's going to happen, if that makes sense.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just find it interesting that, because I've found that working with spirit when sometimes where children are mentioned, and I find like it feels like there's a fine line between, has this spirit come back, newborn, or actually they're still in spirit. Yeah. It's like it feels like a very fine line.
Yes,
initially sensing that.
Yeah, 100%. And time is blurred, and they say there is no actual time. It's a human concept, isn't it? So there's no time in the spirit world, and that's what I put it down to. But I've really, that's one area that I've just never seemed to have been able to master. And I sort of get around it now by saying, well, I'll ask them first. So if I was doing a reading with you, I would say to you, can you place somebody that's just announced a pregnancy? I'm just using that as an example. Place a pregnancy. If you said yes, then I would have known that that's what that was. If you said no, I can't at the moment, I might try and get a bit more information for you, but I would then say to you, well, look out for somebody mentioning it. And I'm quite comfortable with that. And that's how I get around it. But I do get those things. And I get a lot of stuff where they say, well, yeah, that happened this morning, and because another thing, I'll just quickly tell you that I love doing now, and this is something I've developed more, and you don't get this in sort of development classes, where one of the best pieces of information that you can give as real evidence, if I get a nice connection, and I do this all the time, I will say to the person in the spirit world, just tell me a couple of things as unusual as you can that the person's been doing in the last few days, right? And these people seem to love it, and it's that interesting, and especially what they think is unusual. I've had all sorts of strange things, people gluing things, and somebody yesterday I did exactly that, and they said she'd glued her hand to a window. I said, I'm not saying that, and she'd glued her hand to a window by mistake, by the way, not deliberately, you know what I mean? But anyway, I said, do you know anything about this? But you can imagine how amazing that is, because she actually had glued her hand to the window. So I asked them to tell me little pieces of things that say you've been doing, or that you've been something unusual, and they tend to be the lovely moments. They're the ones that when I can sort of prove that the person's there, then I can go on to say different things that they're saying, and it's just a nice. Its evidence comes in different ways, and that's what I want to say.
So what's your thoughts on prediction?
Oh, if you're giving it, absolutely. Yeah, why not?
Because there's a lot of sort of controversial sort of topic, really, because there's a lot of people that say you shouldn't. And I find this more in actually traditional tarot cards, where I feel that you can read that person's, not future, but sort of their energy field, that possibly where that energy field would take them. Yeah. So have you had that sort of in your services and in your readings before?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that, about prediction?
I am completely comfortable with it, I'll be honest, and that's probably a bit sort of controversial. There's an interesting sort of science in a way behind it, because with prediction, there's all this sort of thing, have we got free will, are we making choices ourselves and stuff, okay? The conclusion that I've come to is that there is, and I'm open, this is my opinion, that where there is fixed points in our lives, right? So, an easy fixed point is when we're born, and an easy one is when we die. So they're to fixed points, but there's numerous fixed points. They're things that are going to happen, right? Yeah. And I think in the spirit world, it seems to me, and I've sort of studied this a bit, that when they give me a prediction, and I'm very comfortable to give a prediction, I'll tell you, I will sort of caution the person, sort of say, look, it's up to you what you think, but this is what I'm getting, so I will tell them, right, and watch their faces, so I will tell them a prediction, and I get it quite a lot. But what I've found, is, and this is what I when I've studied this, is what I feel, that the predictions that they give you, this is really interesting, this, are the fixed points, okay? So they can say a birth is a great one, a birth in the family, or somebody being pregnant or something is a good example. It's a fixed point, and there is an inevitability about it that child would be born at that time, and there really is. How they get to there is all over the place. So you get from A to B, right? But you're going to get to B somehow, but you could go all around the world, or you could go straight there, okay? If the bits where you're going all around the world, they don't tend to give you predictions on those, because you've got the free will there, you've got the human, you're having the human experience, so you've got the free will there, so you may get to that point in a very complicated way, or you may get there straight away, right? But they can give you the prediction of the point, So, and I get a good example of this, and I'm very comfortable with it, is I often get told, especially if I'm doing a reading for, say, a young girl or something like that, I often get a message coming through. So you can tell her as well that her first child's going to be a girl, and I get that, right? Yeah. And so, and I'll tell them, I'll say, it's up to you what you don't, don't take this as 100%, but that's what I'm getting, and I don't see anything wrong with it. And I'd go a step further, because I also feel that it's disrespectful to the spirit world not, if they're telling you stuff, you've got to pass it on. They've told me that, and I might say to them, do you really want me to say that to the person? They say, yes, please. Yeah. And I've not known them ever to be wrong. So I think that I'm all in favour of it.
There's a lot that I've experienced in readings as well, when it comes, not everybody is open, not everybody will come to see the medium, but I get a lot with, can you take this person, a friend of yours, in the physical? Oh, yes. Well, there's a lot going on in her life. Can you tell her that it's going to be okay?
Oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
Her mum's here, and she's like, oh, mum's just died. And it's just and it's like, I call them postcards.
Yeah.
It's a postcard that they have to take up. And a lot I get with health to say, how's
who had the court hearing.
Yeah, I'll tell that story. I'll tell you a story quick. Good. Yeah, this lady came to see me, and this is a particular issue, and it was all to do with having to go to court. And I said, Spirit categorically said to me, it's going to be fine. You're not going to end up going to court. Yeah. That's a big statement to make.
Yeah,
I said, no, this is what Spirit say. Are you sure, Stephen? Because I'm really anxious. And anyway, the day of the court, she drove past the Purple Mountain, and she was cursing at me. I didn't know. She was like, you're rubbish, Stephen. And she told me this after. And she drove to the court, and the solicitor come out and saying, I'm trying to get hold of you. The case is thrown out. You're not going to court.
Fantastic. Yeah,
it was to the last half an hour. And another one was this lady came to see me, and I think she was in her early 40s, and she sat down and said, you're pregnant. And she started crying. She went, I can't have children. I've tried all my life to have IVF, and that I love to have a child. I said, your grand said you're going to have a child. When you got this feeling, I saw her over a year later. She come with a buggy. She had 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And it would just happen. So you have to have so much faith.
That's a really good way you put it, Rob. That makes total sense to me. That there's a point, there's something.
There is a fixed point,
Get there and what journey.
That's what you would call free will. Yeah. So it's different for everybody, and that's how everybody's lives have variety, But those fixed points, they can be predictions, because the spirit world know that's going to happen. They'll know that there'll be a girl comes into your life, for example, So they can. That's very interesting, isn't it? But not a coincidence that. But they can give us those fixed points. And I think my overarching thing is, you've just got to be. They're far greater than us, so we need to just be honest. If they're telling us that, and you can always sort of prefix it by saying, this is what I'm being told. And if I was having a reading of something, I'd much rather they just told me what they were getting. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so I have no objection to it at all. I think it's a good thing, and I found it to be to be accurate. The predictions they give, I found them to be accurate. Obviously you put a personal responsibility, and for anybody watching, you wouldn't start predicting people, their demise and things like this, but you wouldn't do that. So there is a personal responsibility. But if the spirit world is telling you something, then I think it's absolutely fine to share.
Well, what's your thoughts on health as well? Because, obviously I mentioned before, when you're giving somebody a reading and you'll say, is your friend, has they got breast cancer, and tell her that she's going to be all right, and it turned out to be okay. And I know that we say this, don't we? We're not doctors and stuff like that, just to cover us as our responsibility. But have you got that before in prior readings where you've picked up health conditions?
100%.
I find that really important to spirit now, more and more.
Really important, yeah.
To say they're picking this up and they're saying, do this.
Yeah. And it's interesting the way the spirit seems to be responsive to this as well, because they seem that, certainly for me, they will give me stuff. If I pick up an illness with somebody, or if they're quite seriously ill or something like that, and I pick that up, then I pick up the emotion with it. And especially if somebody, I'm reading, somebody might say, well, look, I've got these tests, how am I going to be? That type of thing. And it's interesting the way spirit, they give you the answers, because they will say, well, look, the anxiety will lessen, or they won't give you a prediction as in, right, that test will be fine. They say, they sort of give it me in an emotional way, and then I can say to them, well, look, it does feel that that this anxiety is going to be fine, and it's the not knowing that often is the worst part of an illness. It's so once you've had this result, it's a recovery process. So they do it in a very kind of subtle way. I don't get them necessarily saying, I haven't had any ever in my whole career as a medium. I've never had somebody say to me they are going to die, or predict that. I haven't had that. I wouldn't pass that. But
you wouldn't want to know anyway.
No, never experienced that. And there's certain things not being told. Another thing with that is very interesting is that we have in the spirit world, they have roles, they have things that they do. Sometimes they're quite proud of what they're doing in the spirit world, but often they won't. And I love things like that. And so I'm doing a reading for somebody and they say, I've been chosen to do this thing in the spirit world. She'd be so proud of me. And so I tell the person, and then obviously the person says, well, what is it they're doing? And I ask them and they won't tell you. And then the whole reading, I'm nagging them, well, give me a clue. What is it? What's it got to do with? You know what I mean? And I'm seeing as if they do this kind of amazing earthly thing, so brilliant. And can I just share another very quick thing that I experienced very recently as well, where somebody hasn't had really an experience of the earth, right? I've found this, and it's happened twice recently, where I've picked up a child that's been, say, a miscarriage or a stillbirth or something like that. So they haven't really touched the earth properly, right? And when they've come through in the spirit world, and it kind of been years ago, so they've developed and grown and progressed in the spirit world. But I don't know the reason for this, but I've had it twice very recently, where the person in the child in the spirit world who's grown up speaks in an incredible way, and I can only describe it as an angelic way. It's really hard to describe. It's gorgeous. And I was finding I'm wanting them to talk more, because it was like somebody was singing. It was lovely. And I've tried to analyze why would that be, and I just wonder if they've learnt a language in the spirit world rather than here. I don't know that, but that's my theory on it. But I've had it, and I say to the person, I say, gosh, this child is speaking in the most gorgeous way. It is really lovely. I can only say it's like an angelic voice. It's just like when they speak, it's like they're singing, And I've had it twice recently. It's strange, for the same circumstances,
I think the conversation's absolutely amazing. I think we should maybe look at some questions.
Yes.
I think what we should do is maybe an opportunity to ask you the first question, and then we'll maybe then ask Chris a question, and then you can ask me a question just to rotate a little bit. So I'm going to choose the first one for Rob. So this is going to be for you, Rob. Okay. So this is from Bernie.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and it says, do aliens also have a soul?
Oh, right. Okay. Fantastic question. Okay. A nice, easy one to start with.
Not too deep.
Yeah. I do have an answer for that. And the essence of my answer is yes, they do. They do have a soul and they have a spirit the same as we do. They are just occupying a different vessel than we're occupying. We're occupying a human body, having a human experience. They are occupying a different vessel, maybe in a different place. I've massively over the years come to the conclusion for a whole number of reasons, and I've had a lot of evidence of it, where I mean, there certainly is other intelligence existences. There absolutely is, and even parallel Earths and on different dimensions, all this type of stuff, and it is all going on, and a lot of it's going on around us. But I've had it in real proof. I've had a lot of people in the spirit world, when I've spoken to them, have also had their spirit has had an experience on this Earth and in another galaxy or another, in a completely different form. Some of them don't have bodies and things like that. They're just in a sort of energy form. And then I think I mentioned it to you last time. We did a past life. I'll just quickly tell you this because it's an amazing thing. We did a past life regression with somebody, and we took her back to her soul origin. Now, this is just a lady. She was from Wales, and she's just a lady that that wanted a past life regression, not a medium or an astrologer or anything like that. And when she went to her soul origin, right, she started reciting numbers, a series of numbers, and it was like in sequence. It was about 8 numbers, and they were in sequence. And when and it's quite remarkable to remember 8 numbers in sequence, but it was kept repeating, right? So we wrote them down, right? And she was saying it out loud. We wrote them down. When we put those numbers into Google, it took us to a NASA website, and they were exact coordinates of a star, and the actual chances of that happening is probably billions to 1. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't happen, would it? And it was the exact coordinates. And I found out later that because there's so many stars and galaxies and things like this that they've discovered, there's too many to name them, and a lot of them are just a series of numbers, and this was one of those, and ever since then, I've just thought, I've always been thinking, there is something into this, and there is it is clearly, maybe we did come from, another planet or whatever, but that has tipped me to really feeling that it does, so my answer to the question is yes, they do have a soul. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that even though as mediums we require that evidence to give to that client, sometimes the client gives us the evidence.
Oh, and this was you can imagine how we felt when we actually put this into the computer, and it didn't even go through sort of Google. It just came straight to the NASA site, and those numbers were the exact coordinates. We thought it was a bit amazing because we thought, how's she remembering 8 numbers and then it was 8 numbers, and then the same 8 numbers. I thought, well, how's she remembering those numbers?
So is she from another world, from that star system?
Yes, yeah, that was, wow. And we were when all this came out, we were in her soul origin where she first started. Where you've got a soul origin where where your soul was born, if you like, where it first became into existence, and hers was in at that star, whatever 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it was, not the number. That was hers, and it was just remarkable. And this was not a lady that was, she wasn't a scientist or an astronaut or anything like that. She just came out with these numbers. It was remarkable.
Wow,
yeah. It was really.
I love stuff like that because it's what I call the sweet spot.
Oh, it was. It was. Well, we were blown away by it. It was amazing.
I'll pick the next way. I'm in charge. So I'm going to ask you this again, Rob, and then I'm going to ask you for your opinion on this one. And it's from Keith, and it says, "Do you think spirit approves on assisted dying?"
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah,
that's a big one. That one, I think.
Yeah, that is a big one. It's quite controversial, that, but I do feel we are overall we are here. We are our souls, our energy is here in the form of a human to have a human experience, right? So this is quite deep, but if part of that human experience is that it becomes accepted, rightly or wrongly, that's a different matter. But if it becomes accepted that assisted dying is something that is a practice for humans, then we will naturally will experience it. So we wouldn't have so I don't think spirit would disapprove because it's a human thing. We're here to experience all human elements, while we're here on the earth. Okay. My own personal view, which is slightly different, is I'm just not sure of it. It's a real 50-50. I really worry that they put all criterias on it, and they say it's got to be for somebody maybe that is terminally ill, and it's got to be assessed by 2 doctors and everything. But I've heard oncologists talk, and there was one on the radio the other day consultant oncologists, where they have worries about it because that diagnosis is too, nobody can say it. It's too vague, and people do have miracles and people do recover. I know several people who have been given, literally months to live, and they're still alive now. And this was 10 years ago. So you can't know, and I think to put that sort of pressure or that thing into the hands of a doctor, I'm worried about it, but that's my opinion there. I think in the spirit world, they would go along if it's a human experience. That's, I think, overrides everything. That's what I think.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not too dissimilar from Rob. I'm certainly very 50-50 about
I am. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things for me come back to personal responsibility as well. I certainly don't feel anybody disapprove. I think whatever happens, we're going to be the one to have the reckoning with it one way or another, whether it was the right or wrong thing to do. And more on another side, sometimes I wonder, it was brought up very early when I got into this work about sometimes how we can sort of unnaturally be kept here sometimes as well. Where if you think back to years ago, many, many years ago, say in ancient times, if you would have something, you would naturally pass of it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes we're kept in really.
Yeah.
It's a bit controversial. It's not totally natural, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I think it's a very good question.
Yeah.
Keith, it's a very good question, that.
Yeah. I don't think they actually disapprove, because they don't disapprove of exactly, Steve. And it's the same with suicides. They don't, I get asked all the time this, and they don't judge. There is not a judgment from the spirit world, because they regard everything as a human experience. You were just experiencing that human experience. Yeah.
The only thing I have to add, though, is what people forget is before your reincarnation, you are told all this. We've had this in regression. We've had years of experience. This, just pretend for a minute you're in spirit and I'm your guide. You sure you want to reincarnate, Rob? It's going to be hard.
Absolutely.
You're all these conversation. You want to, Rob, you write all these things. I want to do this. I want to do this. You sure, Rob? You've got a list of 100 things there. It's going to be difficult. So you are told in a way, and that's for me.
We actually had that in the circle we sat in very early in the original circle that started everything here, and there was somebody sat in that circle who was having a real hard time with their life there, and somebody came through, one of the guides, somebody connected very strongly with them and said, "You said you were strong enough." We said it's going to be tough. You said you were strong enough, and it blew us all away. We were watching things.
You're talking about their soul contracts, and what you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. And you are told, and I've had that. I resonate with what you're saying there about whether somebody's strong enough, because some of us are given really, or we give for ourselves really difficult contracts to achieve, things which we're probably never going to achieve, so I completely get what you say there.
And sometimes you can pick up with people where, oh my God, you put a lot on your list. You put so much on your list.
That exact conversation with myself. Yeah.
You put a lot of things. It's like they've said, right, I want to sort this all out in this next life. I'm going to do this, that, the other. And you can actually see that in people's lives. We've got so much going on. But they've set themselves a lot of things. It's like,
but there's an overwhelming, it's a fascinating subject. One of the things that I get asked about is what reasons do people, what would make us want to come back? If it's so beautiful in the spirit world, which it is, that existence is so beautiful, why would we want to come back? And why is it that it is considered such a good thing to come to the earth? Why? We can ask ourselves. One of the things that's overwhelming in the spirit world, and this is quite a concept to get your head around, is the feeling of emotions that you have on the earth, and they miss those. Now in the spirit world, this is my experience. In the spirit world, somebody could say, "I'm feeling very emotional, I'm feeling very sad, or I'm feeling very happy, or whatever." But it gets explained to me, it's almost a memory of that feeling. So they understand the concept of feeling sad, right? So they remember it, and they remember it from when they're on the earth. They can remember how they felt, right? But it doesn't feel the same emotion, and the same with happiness and stuff like that. And we crave it, and as a spirit, we crave it. So we want to, and I've had that loads of times where somebody, the reason they've come back is because they wanted to feel that emotion again, and they've missed that emotion. They can remember what the emotion is, and so when you're getting a message off somebody, a medium, they can say, the person's feeling happy now. They are, but it's the memory of happiness. It's not the real living the happiness, because they're just an energy, and those emotions are connected to the human form. So that's what they crave quite often, and the most incredible things that people talk about. I had one man, very quickly to tell you this, the thing that he'd missed more than anything, he said, was he used to, and it's a very strange thing to describe, but he used to sit at the back of his house. He had a bench, and he used to sit at this bench, right? And it was his favourite sort of place. And he was a lovely old man, and he used to close his eyes on the rare sunny days, but it was a sunny day. He used to close his eyes, and he went into this whole description about how when he closed his eyes, you know how when you close your eyes, you can see that if you're in the sun, you can sort of see it red, can't you, inside of your eyelids. He said that's what he missed. He said, I haven't got eyelids here, and I missed it, and he missed that sensation. And he says, when I come back, that's the first thing I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sitting there. And so it's bizarre emotions and feelings that they actually miss, and that can be very compelling to come back, as well as put things right and all the other reasons,
Because ultimately your reincarnation, you hear, you got karma, psychic debt, and you've got contract, but ultimately you're here for you as well. At the very core of it, you're here to enjoy, have that enjoyment,
and have that fulfilled experience.
And you couldn't resist the opportunity when there's exciting things happening on the earth as well.
yeah.
Well, what came to me, what Spirit said to me, like it's not left my mind. He said, you talk about there is 6-7 billion people on the earth, human souls that reincarnate. He said there are billions of souls that want to reincarnate.
Oh, there is 100%. There is.
God, that's so much gratitude.
Yeah. This is you're absolutely right.
Massive amount of people that want to reincarnate,
because physically there isn't. We're quite honoured, you're absolutely right. There's probably there's probably like say 10 million people who'd want to have your body, you know what I mean? So or 10 billion people, but you're absolutely right, and it's considered because the earth is finite. We are human, and there is only a set number of humans, and a set number of bodies to have that experience with, and so it is. That's why it's considered a big honour, in the to have time on the earth is considered in the spirit world a massive. You've won the lottery or something,
I'd agree with that. Do you know what come to mind? It's the daftest thing. I don't know if anybody's seen the film. It's an old one now, Beetlejuice, and where he's got the ticket and they're sat in the waiting room in the spirit world, and somebody's got this big long number. Yeah. He's got this big long number next door to him, like number 5, and he wants to swap it, so it'll be the next one.
So is you our next question?
Yeah,
Chris,
I want to this one.
Have a good rummage
shuffle. Let's have a good shuffle. Okay. How does spirit work with perfume to give loved ones a message?
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's very different.
So who's read that one?
It's Tiana.
Tiana.
Yeah, so how does the spirit world work with perfume to give loved ones a message?
Okay, it's through a medium. If a medium is clairsentience, where they feel and they can feel energy. We get this a lot. Cigarette smoke's another one. Smells. I get one of a smell of leaves and things sometimes. And it's all energy. Everything is energy, actually. Even the table and everything is energy. Perfume is energy, and perfume. And funny enough, atomizers. Funny enough, are or a spray perfume in that way. The spirit will find that easy. There's certain things they can do easily. And so a spirit that's trying to get your attention, right, I've never come across it not being benevolent. This is always something nice. I've never come across this as a bad thing. And if they're trying to get your attention, they will do things which they find easy. And that's why you hear mediums talk about it. Mediums talk about lights flickering, because actually that's an energy that the spirit world can manipulate quite easily. And it's the same with perfume and scent. They find that quite easy. So, and absolutely, if it's a scent that you're, say, a lavender, and say your nan used to wear lavender, that type of thing, it's absolutely, take it that it's from them. You know, it's them sending you that message. That's what that is. Yeah.
I've had that happen to me just as I'm just doing some cooking, or I'm just sat there and this, you know, you can ask for that to happen. I try to say to clients, you know, it's great that you're coming to see me, but you speak to spirit every day. Ask for them. You know, if you're thinking about them, most likely it's that they're there.
Just when you're hungry, is it?
No. Well, no, I'll sit there and I'll smell Nivea cream, and straight that brings back such a strong memory of something that happened to me in my child. So I know that's my loved ones that are there at that point. It's just triggered. It's a trigger, isn't it? Smells as a trigger.
I think smells is something that's not actually talked about enough. It plays a huge part. Cigarette smoke is quite common. And also, you know, I've smelled like Brill cream and things like that. Old Spice, some of the and certain scents that will connect with people. You know, sometimes it's like it goes that way, even with different foods, like you were talking about.
Because you know, if you think though, as things like perfume, smells, food. Every single person here, what's your favourite food? What's your favourite colour? It holds such strong memories. Growing up, you know, if I remember going to my grandparents, the smells, it invokes such emotion in the heart. So of course they're going to use that to invoke that and trigger you as somebody that's in the congregation or the one-to-one, that, isn't it?
100%. And it's a good way, because they're quite, say perfumes, like you mentioned, are quite specific, you know. So, I mean, what a lovely thing if you had a reading and say your loved one in the spirit world always used to wear, for example, Old Spice, for example. Use that because you said that. There are other perfumes available.
Disclaimer.
Just remember to say that. But if it's, I've lost my thread there. If the, what better evidence? And this is where we go back to this, what we were talking about, the structure of messages. What a lovely piece of evidence. If you were the medium to me and you came through, my mum's in the spirit world, and you came through and told me a particular smell, because there's a particular perfume she had which has a very distinctive smell, and you told me that, I'd be blown away. That'd be all I want. I think you were fantastic, you know. And it's very good evidence. It's and so they use it because how lovely for you. They want you to know that it's them. So if I said to you, oh, well, you know, I've got a man who used to wear Old Spice. If he did, well, that's lovely for you, you know. So that's what they do.
It's not always the nicest stuff as well.
No,
The other week I had with a lady, I could see it and I could smell it a bit tripe. And I went to her with it, and it was
but she might have loved it. You didn't.
Not only did she only ate it the day before, she was reintroducing it into a diet, and also her grandfather used to sell it as well.
Oh, so wow! So very relevant, like, you know,
evidence that opened the door for the entire message.
Could you imagine you tried thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to give that"? And I find this most silliest thing. Do you remember that thing that you gave in Great Eccleston, and you gave this lady a lion?
Oh, that was somewhere local, and it was a big lesson for me, that, because I got this lion, and I thought that's got to be symbolic. So I said, "Oh, it's this lion here, it must be for strength," and And she said, "Well, can I just stop you there, because I've got to tell you that in a place I live, my next door neighbour had a lion."
Oh, wow.
That's really taught me a lesson. A huge lesson. So already had my mind coming then. I thought, well, I'm going to take that lesson.
That's one where it really tests you. You've got to sort of act casual, as if you said, well, I knew that, you know.
I'm going to take that away now.
Don't give away all.
Do you want to do a question, Rob?
Yeah, here we go. This is for you, Chris. Question. Do you... I don't know what to say. Do you believe in miracles?
100%. Yeah, I think the answer to that. And I think, you know, we've talked about it when we were talking about messages, and if you're part of what you've experienced, Rob, the proof's in the pudding. And I call it like the sweet spot. When things happen and you can try and make sense of it, whatever, it's just perfect, what you've felt, what you've experienced. And I've experienced with people around me things that happen. It depends how you sort of put miracle. I've seen people overcome physical issues. The things that have just disappeared with no explanations, conditions, and miraculous things happening. So I think the most simple answer to that is, if I'm being asked, is that I do 100%. But I also think it's part of our. It's very fashionable at the minute. Manifestation.
100%. That was what I was going to mention. And I think give it a chance.
What we think we create. So already, if we decide that's not going to happen, it's like miracles can happen. Yeah. It's like taking away from that
self-fulfilling prophecy.
What will happen? A friend of mine years ago who sings, and it was actually on this creation of this podcast, and I sent an email just by random. It was to David Icke, and I thought I'll probably hear nothing back, and I'd already half decided. And I was at his place, and he sang a song, and it was about dreams coming to life. We can have our dreams within our life if we want to. And I came back after listening to that song, and I had an email back off him. And to me, that's like, don't limit yourself. These things. Yeah. So I think it's in our thought patterns very important with that.
Massive.
In knowing this can happen. And that opens that up. Everybody else.
Well, what's your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with what you say. I do believe in them 100%. And I've experienced quite a few. I've been lucky enough to experience quite a few. And so I do believe that. But and I was going to mention what you just mentioned. This manifestation, it's so important. And the law of attraction, the basis of what you send out is what you get back. And we've seen it. Emma will tell you about it as well. With the experience we had very quickly, we know a lady in Liverpool, I won't name her, where she set up a whole centre, a spiritual centre in Liverpool, and it's fantastic. And if anybody wants to know where it is afterwards, I'll tell you, it's an amazing place. And she set this whole place up, has furnished the whole thing. She got given it by the council, all through manifestation. She's not had to pay for one single thing. And some of the things that have happened have been incredible. You'd think miracles, like people turning up, she needed a big gong, and people turning up with, there was somebody shipped one from India for her, and she didn't even ask for it. All these types of things. And she's done the whole lot through this positive law of attraction. And I would say to you, it's massive. It's much bigger than we realize. So miracles do happen, but give them every chance, if that makes sense. Yeah. Put the best possible chance. And another very quick thing on this, in the spirit world, they often don't know. It's one of the most frustrating things that I get through from the person in the spirit world saying, we're trying to look after her, but we don't know what she wants. We don't know how to help her.
True. I've witnessed that so many times.
Especially when you've got a lot of uncertainty and things like that. So if you send out the thought of what you do want, give them a chance, because your loved ones will do stuff. They'll make things happen. And miracles will happen. Yeah, I do believe
I get a lot of that in sort of the end of the reading, where we use some angel answer cards, and they'll ask questions about the, confirmations and things. And sometimes the angels will be given not the clear answers, because to try and encourage that person to instead of asking, what do you want us to for you, what do you want for yourself?
Yeah.
Like you said, if you don't know what you want to manifest, you're here to co-create.
Yeah.
You're not here just to sit like a dummy or zombie. You're here to work, and you're here to learn and to grow. You have to participate in that experience.
Many times.
And it's the same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Like they're going, we're waiting for you to make a decision. Yeah. We'll do what we can.
Yeah. And a tip for anybody watching this or anybody here, if you're manifesting for things or setting intentions for things, be as specific as you possibly can, because there's the world of difference between, say, for example, sending a message out saying, I want to move house, right? Say, for example, right, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to ask. But the difference between, like, I need to move house within the next week, or actually in the next 5 years, I think I feel like moving, they're two completely world apart things. So we need to be specific, and I would say, if you're manifesting a very good way to do it is to time bound things. So that example, if one of your things is, I do want to move house, send that message up that you want to move house, in the next year or the next 6 months, but give them something to work on, because how they affect things and make things happen depends on what we say to them, so you need to be specific about it.
And that's quite freaky that you've said that, actually, Rob, because I'm getting to the end of a book. It's called The Bringers of the Dawn. Other books are available.
Disclaimer.
But it actually, at the end of this book, it talks about the power of our words and what we put out, the manifestation.
100%.
It said just that. It said be specific.
Yeah, it's really important
with your words.
Yeah.
If you want more of something, be clear and put it out there.
100%.
But be specific. And I thought, so not strange that you're coming out with that, because I feel that is very, very important. It makes total sense.
Because it's surprising how different the actions are depending on when you want it, or that type of stuff. So be as specific as you possibly can. Can I just tell you a quick thing to do? This is a really, really good exercise to get you in the way of this. It is to do two things, and this is a bit of homework for the audience here, and maybe you at home there. Say this evening, if you can, the first thing is a positivity. So if you can, get a candle, right? It can be a tea light or anything. It doesn't really matter. Candle, okay? It's the candle is the important thing. Just sit for about a minute and think of really happy things, happy times when you've been at your best, the best version of you, when you've been free from any pains or anything like that, and you're the best happiness, okay? Even if it's a false thing, just feel yourself being really happy, okay? And then light the candle and let that burn down a little bit, okay? It doesn't have to burn right the way down, and but let that burn. And then tomorrow, right, what I want you to do is to get the same candle, light it, think of the things that are holding you back, things that are getting you down, things you're depressed about, things that you feel fed up about, maybe your health's not great, those types of things, right? Think of those for a minute and then blow the candle out, okay? That simple symbolic gesture gets us to the law of attraction working, and it's very effective. So I would say do that to you. And the other quick one that I would say, a little tip for you, is, and it sounds like very trivial, but it's not. I can't tell you the importance of this. If there's something that you're really desperately trying to get over, maybe a bereavement, maybe some bad news, or something that you're finding difficult to cope with, right? Literally get a big piece of paper, right? Write whatever it is on it. And it can be general. It can be, say if your health's getting you down, for example, right? You can just write the word health in big letters on this piece of paper, but make a sort of proper a big gesture of this, right? Get the piece of paper, write whatever it is on there. And it can be a name if it's somebody in your life that you don't want in your life, that type of stuff. But write whatever it is on the piece of paper, scrumple it up as tight as you can, right? And throw it in the bin. And that simple gesture is massive. It's getting the law of attraction working with you. And what I would say with that is do it as flamboyantly as you can. Make it even a thing. Maybe put the bin on the other side of the room and try and get it in the bin. So it's more. They talk about it being ceremony, but it's making it more memorable. Okay, but it's a really massive tip. And you know what? It instantly makes you feel better. So
I think with things pen to paper. I've done that, and I've had that through in readings as well. I've actually done it recently over the last couple of days. Some things that I want to be doing more regularly, and I kept getting from spirit. You need to put pen to paper. It's almost like you're making a contract with yourself. They're saying, "Right, I'm really going to commit to this." 1, 2, 3. Because actually, when I wrote them out, they said, "Don't write too many. Don't overstretch yourself because you won't do them."
And the actual gesture, when you analyze it, the gesture, although it is a gesture, it's very powerful, of throwing that thing into the bin, right, is the beginning of you retaking control of that situation.
So true. Love that. Because so many different situations, we allow ourselves to become powerless and feel
absolutely.
We're taking back our power in that moment.
100% we are. You're
not submissive. You're not passive. You're stepping into the I am power, and that you are working with that. And really, it's telling you that you've learned that lesson. It's time to let that go now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The healing can then continue. So, should we do another question?
Stephen, it's your turn.
Right. Let me have a look. I don't want this one now.
Other questions are available. That's got to be our theme now.
Your redos. You laugh at me because this is a question I love asking other mediums. And it says, "What is the future for spiritualism?"
Oh wow! Okay, go on. Let's down to you.
When we did one of our first interviews ever on this podcast, and I was going very gentle, and Stephen comes in with, what do you think of mediumship's going to be like in the next 30 years? So it's a question you've asked.
Well, without going too deep, I think that, if anything, history's taught us that without using the word spiritualism, we've all worked with spirit in some capacity. I think that will always be. There will always be room for mediumship in some way. But I think and I feel that mediumship has to modernise, has to change, and has to evolve to serve the modern spirit. I think that's going to be the future.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm very, very optimistic about it, and I'm and I don't mind the sort of changes. And it summed it up for me that things are going in the right direction, and things this general body of acceptance. Because there's two Japanese. I won't name other companies are available. I won't mention them. But there's two Japanese companies, very famous companies, which you'll all know, right? One of them is a very famous camera. Company begins with K, right? Other cameras, yeah. Thank you. keep up. There's two famous Japanese companies right now, right? Who on their board of directors, they've got an advisor who is a professional medium, right? In Japan, and he goes to meetings and he gives what they call it. I've read up on all this, and they call it they call it a gut feeling, right? But it's not. It's a sort of psychic thing, and they will go, and this person will, if they're doing a deal with somebody or a negotiation or whatever, this medium is paid a lot of money to do it, will sit there and then give the board of directors a sort of a bit of a yes or no, and it's advanced so much that they will make actual decisions on that. So if that medium said, I'm actually not at all comfortable with that person, they wouldn't do the contract. That's how, and we can be talking millions of pounds. So it's really advanced, and things like that. Although that's a commercial side of spiritualism, it's all part of it, and it's a part. It's where we've come to. And I agree, we've got to cater for the modern. We have.
It's changing. The movement is changing, and I think, and I feel that just as long as we allow it to be organic and natural and allow that sort of through the heart. Yeah, there's things we don't agree with, but that's great. We're not going to agree with everything. Some of the modern spiritualism I don't agree with, but that is okay as well. We're not going to agree with everything, are we, with our opinions? But what I like to see for the future is just more co-creation, more working together in union and love.
Yeah.
What do you think the future is?
I think the future is the word that comes to mind actually is freedom. More freedom, maybe where there's in the modern spiritualism. I'm not talking about some set organizations. I feel we're breaking away from a lot of those constraints that may have served perfectly well. Some lovely, good-hearted people that run them, but I feel like a lot that might have. Everything has its time. Ways of doing things, and I feel a strength in anybody, whether it's you're talking mediumship, business, is knowing when something's had its time.
Absolutely.
And it's time to change. Even us at the Perfect Mountain, we're celebrating 10 years this year, and we have changed multiple times. And I think it's good not to be afraid of change, and there are those respectfully who fear change. Very
Absolutely.
To change things and thinking it's going to disrespect what comes before. Actually, it's honouring it. Those pioneers in the spirit world are going, go for it. Do it your way. Please do.
100%.
They're honouring that.
Got to evolve and change.
And I think remembering the lessons that have come with it as well. So actually, I'd do a full circle to what you spoke about at the beginning, Rob, what you experienced, the openness with people. And I think that's going to create a stronger expansion and bringing it into our daily lives stronger. Not just being, we're going to go to the psychic night Friday night. It's actually coming in every day of the week in every part of our life. Area.
And I think it really comes down to a basic thing of if we are helping somebody and maybe getting that closure, and it's done with a good heart and in the right way, because you have to, as a medium, cater for all different things. I sometimes do have to do readings for people, say young girls, for example. They want a completely different reading than, say, somebody who's just lost their partner or something. I've known people, quite a number, who have not got anybody in the spirit world. They never knew anybody that's passed, and they don't know any. But it doesn't mean that they don't want a direct direction and they don't want a spiritual thing. And so you have to adapt that
so
reading,
true.
to what's relevant to them, because it'd be a completely different reading than somebody who has lost their loved one, And I think we have to be aware of that, and we can't then criticize. Neither of those readings are any better than the other one. It's how what you've done for that person after they've left. Have they felt better? Have they, have they found a direction? And then I think I've done my job. Then if I do that,
I think it's a huge future. Things like hypnosis, regression, the healing arts. It's all flourishing, all growing. It seems that things aren't hidden anymore. There seems to be a lot more openness, which is great. People talking about wacky and weird stuff, and actually the knowledge that is being shared now, the co-creation of centers, and I think it's really, really exciting times. And I want to manifest. People talk about the negative, I think, too much, and I think talk about manifestation. I'm going to manifest for a brighter future. Things
100%.
Things are going to get better, and it always does.
It's got to be a good thing. This the sort of scientific community over the last few years. I know somebody in this country who is doing a PhD in mediumship, a PhD in mediumship, and so it's a fabulous thing. So the scientific community, and there's all these experiments with the electrodes on your heads and things like this, but which are actually showing these things. When we've talked about energy changing and things like that, they're showing these on CAT scans and things like that. And so the proof is really there for the scientific minded people, and I think that's got to be a good way forward as well.
Science definitely has its part to play.
Yeah, definitely.
Should you do the question?
Yeah. So Rob, I believe it's your turn now.
Okie dokie.
Shake them up.
We'll go to the 20 to go, yeah. The night's young.
Should be done by midnight.
I should have brought my glasses. Do friends expect... nice question there. Do friends expect hearings from you? Readings from you? Hearings, I was going to say. Do friends expect readings from you? I can say yes.
I know it was knocking on your door.
You always, they do. Yeah. And it's...
does it ever annoy you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Is anybody listening?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd come round for dinner.
You do get that. And then I've actually had that, and I've gone to, so I've been invited for tea, and then there's a house full, they've invited everybody, so yeah, I do get it a lot. Yeah.
It must be a little bit frustrating. Is sometimes we were laughing because we were talking about where we do a lot of healing here, and it's nice to go to places where people don't know you, because then they have an expectation what you're picking up. And actually, when I go for a treatment, a massage, I just tell you a funny story. We went to Ruby Hall, and I never did it after that.
Other spas are available.
Yeah. And she said, what do you do? I said, I'm a medium. And as soon as I said that, I was picking things up from her, and it almost ruined my treatment because I wanted to completely switch off. So when they say, what do you do? I do this. I do a bit of baking, or I do a bit of cooking. I never tell them what I do because I just switch off with that energy.
I had one where I was going in. I was actually having a minor operation done on my knee, and as they were sort of putting me out, and they talk to you a lot to really take your mind off it. What's happening? And this lady said, what do you do for a living? So I sort of told her, and then the last thing I remember before I went was, do you see anything in my aura?
Oh my God, yeah. I might use, oh my God, have I died or something? That's yeah. Oh my God, that's a classic. That is a classic. Yeah. Oh,
you remember that?
I can picture it now.
I always thought you were going to say, just before you go, could you do a couple of cards for me?
That's amazing. Should we do the question?
Next one, is it? That's it?
Yeah.
You were going to jump the queue.
No, I don't mind.
We'll get to the nitty. I wanted that big one. What's this one's come out? Okay, so do you know if you've encountered an attachment of a spirit, and how would you deal with it? That's a very good question.
Yeah, good.
Jill.
Yeah, good question. There is. I would be cautious over a lot of this because, in my experience, the vast majority of things where I've been to say house clearances, where there's been things happening in the house, or that people have talked about attachments and negativity and that, I would say, in my experience, 80% of those times, and especially when you hear about things on Ouija boards and things like this, 80% of it is the person's consciousness, their own consciousness, and we find this, and it's something within them. Okay, the actual attachments that are sort of like a dark side or something is very, very rare. It's hardly ever come across that, and the ones that I have come across have been people who have been confused, or that they've been very, very strong personalities when they were alive, and they've come back through with the angry sort of essence that they had when they were alive, the personality. But I just don't believe in, and I will, in 40 years of this, I've never experienced where there is actually a sort of negative attachment, what you would think. And when you really analyze these things, people say, oh, I've had experience with a Ouija board, and the thing flew off the table and smashed against the wall, and all these types of things. And when you actually look at it, it's often, well, nearly always, the psyche of the people that are doing it. It's not the actual spirit world. That's my view.
We talk a lot about it, actually, and the first thing we say to people is often it's projection of unhealed trauma, mental distortion that is projected inward into the family, into the home. So the first thing we should be looking at is self-care, self-healing, look at self, sort yourself out, and often 99.9% of everything gets altered then. The vibrations are altered.
I'm glad you said that, because I find that exactly the same.
That's our experience as well.
It's something I'm quite passionate about, actually, because I find not that it's never necessary to visit somebody's home. I've known where it has been, but I'm in agreement with Rob. It's in the minority.
Very rare,
and for me, 90% of the time, maybe more, we get messages now and again, or people will ask us, I've had something going on in the home, something's happening. And I feel, do you know, when we talked about disempowering ourselves, I find a lot of people disempower themselves straight away. So the first thing I will do, actually happened the other week, is I will send a series of questions for them to ask themselves. What time is it happening? What exactly are you feeling when you do feel it? And then I'll give them some of my experience of things that will resolve things very quickly. And I absolutely agree with a lot of the time, because what we can experience, we've moved and it's still happening, because it's to do with somebody in the
100%.
That's one part. The other part that I find has 100% success rate, because I find there might be somebody that used to live in the house that's just sort of hanging around. Maybe they're ready. Their loved ones are going, come on, it's that. Well, I still want to be here. Is to speak out loud to whatever energy you think's there. I found that works terrifically. Saying perhaps, look, you're keeping us awake at night here. And not. I always specify when I say that, never do it with anger or shout at anybody. Anybody you see doing that, who's doing any form of cleansing, you see people on telly, it's nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
Utterly nonsense.
And it isn't helping anybody. No. Them sort of people need removing from the situation immediately, and just saying, it's time for you to move on. And often that will be sorted. But I'm in agreement with what both you and Stephen saying, and just empower yourselves of the situation, what exactly is happening. And quite often, people who can be in a little bit of panic say, what are you actually feeling? And they say, well, actually, I don't feel anything bad.
Yeah.
And then it changes, and it can actually also be a loved one of theirs, even a distant relative, trying to get their attention.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit spooked by it, but once we start to understand
it, they get spooked, and I get a lot exactly like that, where it's just spooked them because something keeps moving. I've been putting my keys down here, and every time I come down in the morning, they're there. And actually, those things do turn out often to be a loved one. That's trying to get their attention.
Do you think, Rob, a little bit where, I mentioned movies earlier, and the influence of television and movies can be quite strong, and do you think some of these films have shown that has sort of played into people's psyche sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say something that I know this is slightly controversial, but it's absolutely my view on this, is people have, and quite possibly because of movies, things with say something like a Ouija board, right? You'll get a lot of people say, "Oh, I won't touch those there," and then they quote you some crazy experience they've had as a child when they were maybe half drunk doing it in the loft or something, and the glass is smashed or whatever. But actually, a Ouija board, right, it's all to do with the mentality and the psyche of the people who are using it, right? The actual Ouija board often is a piece of plastic made in Taiwan. You know, it hasn't got an intrinsic property, and that's where people are mistaken, where they watch the films and you think this is something that summons up some sort of portal or something. It just doesn't. It's a piece of wood or a piece of plastic. You know, I mean, they were selling them, you know, for like $3.99 for kids, weren't they? Made in Taiwan, and it's exactly the same thing. It's the same thing with all the numbers and the letters and things. It's all to do with the psyche of the people that use it. It's not got an intrinsic value, an inherent value itself. You know, it doesn't bring spirit there. You know, it makes you think about it, so that might bring spirit, but it doesn't. The board itself could be just this board here, or you know, this, you know, that table there. It's just the same. There's no intrinsic value in it, but it's got so many. It conjures up this thing, and if you ever mention Ouija boards to people, they sort of think you're the devil, you know, and it's got such a bad reputation.
Everybody's got a story.
Of course they have, yeah. But it doesn't have a value itself, a spiritual value itself, except for that it focuses the mind. That's all. But that's the psyche of the people. Yeah.
Sometimes going into that thought and that disempowerment and feeling it could be something, could sort of almost attract
100%.
something like that.
Oh,
well.
yeah, 100%.
How we're carrying. What our thoughts go to, our mindset is really important.
Yeah, and if you to drill into it, if people think that say using a Ouija board somehow opens a portal for other spirits to come in, right? Actually, the thing of using it can do that, but it's not the board, right? If you sat there without the board there and you all sat there and thought about this, you'd open that same portal.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. That's what I want to get across. It's not the board itself. Yeah.
I remember when we got into seance work here at the Purple Mountain, we openly used the Ouija board in the right condition. It was a great way to communicate.
Oh, it's a good way. Yeah.
When we did the table tipping and things like that. And I remember asking my partner, said, "You give me your Christmas list. You're asking for really wacky things every year." And one of them was to have an Ouija board, and managed to find one that was from the early 70s from America. So it must have held some kind of energy. And obviously I didn't know what it was, and he wrapped it up. And my cat every night would sit on that present, and sit on it, and obviously he knew what was going on. I said, "What is she doing?" And she was trying to scratch at it and sit on it, and it was just perhaps the energy that was used from previous people, perhaps.
But the sort of movies I watched something, right, and I don't know if it was called Ouija or something, but I watched this film, right, where and it was. I think it was on Netflix or something, but I watched other channels are available. I just got that. I watched this film, right, and it was just this ludicrous thing, and it was an American thing with American children who were using this Ouija board, right, and their parents had found them using the Ouija board, right, and I cannot tell you the list of things that they were expected to do. They had to burn it, right, they had to get the ashes, and then the ashes had to be buried at least 8 foot underground, right, so they were digging this incredible hole to put these ashes in, and then they had to be covered in, I think it was birch leaves or something, and all for this kind of Ouija board thing, which was like made in Taiwan and made of plastic, you know what I mean? But this is the sort of fantasy world that it is, you know, honestly.
But doesn't that just show you the power of the mind, how powerful you can be to manifest something, but use that energy instead of how really what comes to my mind is how powerful fear is, even though it's an illusion, how you can fuel that fear into something negative instead of fueling it negatively, use it in a positive way.
Rob made a good point. I mean, a lot of people that I know that have experimented with a Ouija board, it's actually they're very intrigued about the spirit. I think
curious.
The great way you put it, Rob, is maybe remove that and just sit, get a group of like-minded people and just sit. Meditate. And
that's all you need to do. You don't need the board.
You're going to get that energy.
Absolutely.
And things can happen.
But the human mind works in a funny way. I don't know if you've ever been on like a ghost hunt or one of these paranormal investigations, you know, And I do take a bit of a back seat with those things because you can see the people there, and you might have a group of them, maybe lovely people, and you can see the group of maybe 10 people or whatever, you know, and they're all willing themselves to be frightened out of the wits. That's what they want, you know. And I sit there, sort of try and be as objective as I can, right? And honestly, the slightest tap, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Yeah. Oh, touch me, you know. And you think, hang on a minute, you know.
They used to do that on that program, Most Haunted. And
yeah, the slightest thing, you know.
And they'd be there at a table in the dark, and they'd set the condition so much that if somebody would have dropped a pin on the floor, hit the ceiling.
Yeah. Hang on, that's somebody screaming. You know,
if anything would have happened, they'd set themselves to such attention.
Absolutely.
That the slightest noise would.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story, Anita and Roy, who got me and Chris into the work, who started our awakening? We sat in a circle, and she would be the trance medium, so spirit would come through and speak to us, and there was this man who would come through every week in the second half, and he was laughing. He was telling us that the house that he used to live in, you know, he's moved a few things in the house, and this couple that lived there are scared to death, and they would get the priest to come round to put holy water, and he thought it was hilarious. He said, what they don't realise, I go out and I'll come back in when he's finished. So he said he's done nothing. He said, what are they doing that for? And then he's moving the things again, and he thought it was hilarious. He was coming back every week. I said, I think maybe you should leave the couple alone, but it just shows you, you know, it's the power that you give your man, isn't it?
Interesting, really good question that as well. So whose turn is it?
Shall I do one more question? Are we all right for time?
One more. Last one, and then
yeah.
So, wow, this is a great one to finish off with. What is your most awesome spiritual experience?
Oh, yeah, I've got it. I will very quickly tell you. You know exactly what I'm going to say. I had the most incredible experience once where we lived in a flat. How long ago was that? A few years ago, wasn't it?
Over 5 years ago.
Yeah, maybe over 5 years ago. And I was doing a bit of a reading for somebody. I was on the laptop, and I was sitting in our flat. Emma had gone to her dad's for the evening, and I was doing a reading for somebody. This is honestly true, and I was doing a reading for somebody in New York, and I was over my iPad, and it was like a written type of reading. I was asking questions, I was answering the questions and stuff, right? And I'm there, right? And I became aware, well, first of all, literally sitting there, and the room that I was in, where a modern flat we had, suddenly the temperature dropped by about 10 degrees. It just went really cold, just instantly cold. Never experienced that in my life like that before, that level of the coldness, right? The next thing, there was something I could only describe as an orb, but a big sort of ball of light shot across the room, right, and a full manifestation of a male, right, and as absolutely as realistic as you're sitting there, right, just there, this huge guy, didn't look, he looked a bit unusual because he had a sort of big cloak on and stuff like this, right, and he, and I'm sitting there, and I was fairly frightened about it because it was really played with my mind, because I actually started thinking, well, this is a burglar, you know, in the house, you know, it was that realistic, you know, and so I'm sitting there on the iPad, right. And I said, and he starts speaking, and he says, type what I'm saying. That's all he said. Very, very sort of just formal, type what I'm saying. Okay. So, and I almost did it automatically because it was such a bizarre situation, and I'm wanting to phone Emma to say, get home and come and see this. And so so type in this message, and I didn't really know what I typed, you know. Anyway, so I typed the message and I sent it back over to this Caroline in America. And then, as soon as I'd done that, the manifestation of the full manifestation of a man, he then changed into sort of like almost like that orb energy and flew off. But he flew out the room past the clock that we had on the wall. So I then messaged Caroline, who I was talking to in America, and I phoned you, and I said, you won't believe what's happened here. And I said, have you read the message? And she said, I can't read the message because I've been crying so much. So I said, oh my God, what have I written? You know, and it was the most incredible message for this woman in America from her mum, who's in the spirit world. And there was dozens of things in it that were absolutely unique to her. And actually there was all sorts of stuff about a power of attorney they'd done and all real details. And she said, it's taken me about 20 minutes to keep reading this because I can't believe it, you know. So, and it was told for me by the person. So just to finish that off, Emma then comes home. I said, Emma, you've got to come home. This is incredible what's happened here. So Emma came home. And understandably, I'm a medium as well, and understandably, she was a bit disappointed about not seeing all this, right? And so I described it all, and I said, and the sort of essence, if you like, went into this ball of light and flew past the clock. As we said that, right, we had a clock on the wall, and it was flush with the wall. It was like bit of an old-fashioned clock, but it was flat against the wall, right? So suddenly, what was it like, Emma? It just started going shaking, and we couldn't stop it. We were pushing it, and it was nothing behind it, nothing making it do this. This was like sort of screwed to the wall, and it was vibrating backwards and forwards like that, And I've always felt, and Emma saw it, and it was incredible. Went on for a few minutes, and we couldn't stop it. We just had to wait for it to stop shaking, and nothing had caused it. And I always felt then that it was spirit, or it was that man in the spirit world letting Emma share part of it, because she'd missed it, and it was the proof. And you might have found it, maybe couldn't quite believe what I'd said to you, but when she saw that shaking, and then I showed her the email that I'd sent to the woman in America, it was amazing. So that's my most amazing experience.
Wow.
Incredible.
How can you follow that?
Perfect. That's a great way to end this podcast. So I just want to thank Rob, thank you for sharing.
No, thank you much, and thank you all for attending this thing. Yeah, thank you very much. A pleasure.
Yeah, our audience who shared it. It's been a wonderful energy that we've shared, and some wonderful questions as well. So we've covered a lot of subjects.
Do you fancy doing another one in the future?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, yeah. Great questions, very good questions.
You're doing that mediumship for us in October, aren't you? So we could maybe do something before and do another, maybe more of an interactive session.
Yeah.
So get microphones.
So as an experiment, we'll see. It seems to have gone really well on our side as well.
Yeah,
this is the first of its kind. So I just want to thank anybody who's watching this, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us. We hope you've enjoyed this chat that we've had and this time we've shared together, and just sending lots of love to everybody.
And if you want to connect with Rob, I think Chris is going to put some links on and connect with him.
So definitely, if you want to connect with Rob, we'll put the links wherever you're listening or wherever you're watching, of course, and you'll be able to do that 100%.
It's been amazing. Thank you very much for tuning in, and into the next podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.